Hello and welcome to Willo Well. My name is Sam Bertram. Every month on Willo Well, we seek to find answers to the most important questions facing humanity and our planet. We do this in an attempt to educate ourselves on where we should be focusing our resources and why. This podcast is brought to you by Willo. Willo's mission is to eliminate diet-related disease through democratizing access to personalized plant-based nutrition. We allowed subscribers to control their own plot in Willo's farm from the palm of their hand. Our Beyond Organic produce brings a new category of food quality and safety directly to your door. Join today at www.willo.farm. So today we are going to discover what sits at the very base of the United States battle against chronic disease. Poor nutrition kills more people than anything else on earth. More than car accidents, more than alcohol, more than tobacco. Poor nutrition costs the United States $1.7 trillion a year, which is 10% of US GDP and climbing. Poor nutrition has resulted in more than 2/3 of adults in the United States being overweight and obese, and 1/3 of children in the same state. Almost half of the global population is suffering from malnourishment of some kind, almost half. Poor nutrition, in my humble opinion, is the greatest problem facing humanity today, and it is why myself and my guest are dedicating our lives to solve the problem. So today our guest, Dr. Randall, has studied the effect of diet on human health for decades and understands it better than almost anyone else on earth. She practices holistic medicine in Woodland Hills, California, and was one of the first medical professionals to introduce the idea of holistic medicine while teaching at UCLA Medical School. We are grateful to have her with us today to get closer to the truth. Dr. Randall, welcome, and please, if you'd like to, introduce yourself further.
Thank you so much. Well, you did a very nice job and pretty accurate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also am a gastroenterologist, so of course I'm interested in food. I'm interested in digestion, and I always felt that that's where all disease began and ended, and I still feel that way. And actually, it's borne out to be the truth.
Yes.
So I'm even more interested, if it could be, than I was initially, because I branched out and educated myself in many, many different disciplines of holistic, integrated, functional medicine, board certified in all of those, including gastroenterology. So, it all goes together to paint the same picture, but now we know why. Before it was, we know it's happening, but we really couldn't know exactly why. And we're still going to keep studying it, but we know way more than we did.
Well, it must be great to kind of be vindicated after, how many decades you've been working on this, after all of these studies that are coming out, validating exactly what you've been saying.
I'll tell you when I'm going to be vindicated. I'm going to be vindicated when people are healthier.
Right.
And when the people get it.
Yes. Yes.
Because we have people in a very rich country starving to death because they're choosing to eat the wrong food.
Yes.
And a lot of it is because they don't understand. Some of it is because they kind of want to pretend it isn't happening. But I think if they really knew the truth, they probably will want to pay more attention, not only for themselves, but for their children.
It is, when we've spoken about this before, it's such a fascinating thing that such a transient sense as taste. Taste lasts for the seconds that you chew. And then it disappears down your tract, and then away goes the sensation. And it's like this drug that we want to continue to fulfill. And even when, as you have, and even when the data shows that the number one thing that we do to kill ourselves is what we eat, and it all comes down to this extremely transient 30-second experience, 5-minute experience. It's amazing how powerful that experience is. And I thinking about how we can not only change people's perspectives, but really change their taste buds. Because I'm not sure if that's what happened to you, but that's what happened to me.
It does change. Every habit that you do for like about a month changes. But this is the thing. We love sugar for a reason. Sugar is the enemy. There probably was about this much sugar or less, a 100-mile radius when we were evolving our genetics that are ancient, that we live in. Yes. And so it was, a matter of surviving better.
Yes.
That little bit of sugar. If you got that little bit of sugar, you were going to survive better than the next guy. But that was not very much to go between a lot of people. Now it's everywhere. It's in your house. It's on
I
the
had
corner. It's at every single restaurant, even healthy restaurants, is sugar. And so if you eat a lot of sugar, it lights up your nucleus accumbens, which is your addiction center in your brain. So sugar is a drug.
Yeah, I mean, it's I forget what the specific number is, so don't quote me, but somewhere between 60 and 70% of all products in grocery stores have added sugar of some kind.
Right.
That's for a
They
reason.
do that because they know that.
Yes.
They know that people are going to want to eat it more. McDonald's put sugar in their buns, or unless they took it out, but it always has been. And it's not just McDonald's, but a lot of restaurants.
So I got one of my friends gave me a couple of mineral waters, just, fizzy drinks with a flavor in it. And I'm tasting it. I said, gee, this is a bloody good mineral water. And so I turn around and look at the nutrition facts, 26 grams of sugar in a mineral water can. You're just thinking like, that would be sickening if I shoveled it into my mouth teaspoon by teaspoon, but it's okay when it's dissolved in fizzy.
Actually, I can't stand things that are too sweet anymore because I'm so used to not having it, and to me, foods taste much better. Natural foods with natural sugar is delightful, is better.
It is.
And, I love fruit and healthy fruit, organic fruit. But the thing about the addiction is once you stop eating it, it's like dimming, like the dimmer switches that we have on our lights goes down. So in about a month, you want it less. After that, it becomes a psychological problem.
Yes.
But up until then, that's a physical problem, but that can be overcome fairly quickly.
Yes. I mean, when this all began for me in 2015, early 2015, dark chocolate tasted horrendously bad to me when I started doing this. But, over, a 3 or 4 month period, started eating dark chocolate. It's sweet to me now.
Yeah, right? No, it changes.
What on earth is going on? Anyway, so.
They did this experiment on rats, maybe you've heard of it, where they gave them a choice between extremely addictive drugs, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, and sugar. They chose the sugar every bloody time. Then they even gave them an electrical shock, like near lethal electrical shock. If they went for that sugar, they still took it. So it shows you how addictive it is. But once again, to emphasize, it can easily be diminished by not eating it.
Yes. And it's
if you eat it less, it dims down and becomes a non-problem.
Yes.
Because right now, something that was designed to help us survive is killing us.
Yes.
And it's associated with the obesity rates when they brought out, high fructose corn syrup, which is not only deadly from a sugar standpoint, from its own deadly effects it has on us. Like in 1950s, it was 12% obesity. In the 40s, after the fast food restaurants came out with those big drinks, it went up to like 20-25%. Now, as you said, people are dying way more. It's something like, it's over 50%.
Yes.
Clear, it's between 45-50% obesity in this country. So, that's all from that drink and that kind of food.
Yes. I mean, it's for me, it's so sad to see that's the state of humanity, the most educated we've ever been, the most wealthy we've ever been. And we're in this state, and the purpose of my life is to figure out how to solve that problem because I want people to be healthy. I don't want the average mortality age in the US to decrease year over year as it did last year. So anyway, I mean, both of us are on exactly the same page, and I'd just love to really dive into the deep end and ask, very important. I would say that they are basic questions, but I think they're very, very important questions to paint the picture as broadly as we can and as accurately we can at the same time. So the first question I'll ask you, what is chronic disease?
Yeah, well, chronic disease is important because chronic disease is a result of eating too much sugar, eating too much of the wrong kind of fat. There is good fat, we know now. But eating poorly, okay? What is eating poorly? Well, eating the wrong thing, but also not eating the right thing.
Yes.
So it's important that you eat the right thing and take out the bad things.
Right.
So what is a chronic disease? A chronic disease is something you've had for more than 3 months. And all chronic disease is based on inflammation.
Wow.
Inflammation is the final common denominator of all chronic disease.
Right.
So That's what a chronic disease is. You've had it for more than 3 months. It's most likely inflammatory based. And it's the things that are killing people: heart disease, diabetes,
Yep. Let me
arthritis. Oh, I'm
let me
sorry.
chime in. Let me chime in on exactly that. So 2/3 of all death in the United States are caused by the following 5 diseases: heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, and diabetes.
And they're all inflammatory based. Heart
It's,
disease, everybody thinks it's from your vessels getting clogged up, but it's not really from your vessels getting clogged up. Sure, you get plaques in your coronary arteries, but
mhm,
why? Because your endothelium, which is the lining of the vessels, gets unhealthy
right.
and can't handle the fats, and the fats get laid down underneath it. But what's make those little buggers explode like a volcano is inflammation. They're like little volcanoes, and they get more and more inflamed from the, unhealthy food and bout of inflammation in the body, and
Yeah.
they explode, and you get a heart attack.
So if I am eating poorly, and we'll get into this in a minute, what you explained it just then, what the actual mechanism is. If I am eating poorly, what is physiologically happening inside of my body that contributes to heart disease? And specifically, mechanistically, what is going on when I consume
Mhm.
processed meats and the sugars?
Well, what I just told you was the end of the
Mm-hmm.
story. The
Right.
beginning of the story is that your microbiome shifts,
Mm-hmm.
like, in not a good way. That's all the bacteria that live inside of you, and that those microbiome have the amount of it's equal to another brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's another organ. So
Yes.
if they're not healthy, it communicates with your mind, the mind gut syndrome. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, Evan Meyer just wrote a whole book on it. It's quite good. Check it out. But
Mm-hmm.
when that microbiome gets unhealthy, and when you have the wrong amount of fiber in
Mm-hmm.
your gut, you can't hang on to the right bacteria. And the really good bacteria don't want to hang around, and you get bad bacteria.
Right.
That creates a leaky gut, what we call leaky gut. Back when I trained, nobody believed in a leaky gut, except me. And they said that doesn't exist. Whatever's in there is in there. It's a commensal thing. It doesn't matter. What
Right.
you can't see doesn't matter. And of course, now we know, of course, it's the opposite. It's been on
Yes.
Newsweek and Time. I mean, it super matters. It super matters.
Yep.
Why? Because if you don't have the right bacteria, you don't have the right fiber, you get leaky gut, and you get dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in the bacteria. And what that causes is inflammation. Okay,
Right.
that's where it starts, in the gut.
And so if I was to get inflammation in the gut, why does that gut inflammation then affect my heart? So why is inflammation so deadly, and why is it underlying all of these different chronic diseases?
Well, because what happens is the inflammation in your gut cells are supposed to be totally together, like a picket fence, like tight. They even have these little things called tight junctions on a microscopic basis. It looks like it might be little fibers, but it's not. It's unicellular, one layer thick.
Wow.
When they get inflamed, what happens when you fall down and skin your knee? They spread apart. So the food that you eat, it still goes through the brush border, through the cells process like it should, and into your body, but also you have these spaces, so it goes straight through. So the endotoxins from those bad bacteria and from the food, even from the food. So 2 things: the endotoxins from the bad bacteria go straight into your bloodstream. Your body goes, we got dangerous strangers in the house. We need to make antibodies to them. Inflammatory process starts. And then the food goes in, your body reacts to it like more dangerous strangers. This is really bad. Makes antibodies to it, which cross-reacts with your own tissues.
Right.
And that's what arthritis is. It can, if it's bad enough, it can go into autoimmune disease. So there's your inflammatory process starting and spreading into your system.
Right. So the response by the body is an attempt to contain it locally, but because these substances are, flowing through the bloodstream, they're actually, body wide.
Exactly. Well, at first it's local, and then it spreads because your bloodstream's right there. That's what it's meant to do. The food's supposed to go into the capillary system that feeds your immense gut, because it's a huge absorptive system. But then it goes into your blood. It's free, and then your whole body starts reacting.
What is it about? So, we'll talk about what underlies inflammation again. But why is it, particularly in the United States, and you would say, you know, the Western world at large, why is heart disease specifically so prevalent? So, you know, we are seeing a lot of incidences of Alzheimer's and dementia and a variety of these other diseases. COPD was on the list before as well. What is there something about the heart that makes it more susceptible? I've read, for example, that the heart's regeneration rate in terms of its tissue is very, very slow. So it may just accumulate this damage over time. I'm not sure if that's true, but you know, why does this issue accumulate in the heart, or do we only really see it manifest because it's such an important organ?
No, exactly. If you have heart disease, guaranteed, if you look at your other vessels, you probably have peripheral vascular disease as well.
Okay.
You probably have disease in your head that would promote you or leave you more prevalent to get stroke.
Yes.
You have the same process going on throughout your body, the vascular endothelial malfunction. That's why I love plant protein so much, because it's so, it makes this type of flow, blood flow through your arteries, especially your heart, but to your muscles, because I'm really interested in athletes too.
Yes.
To get to those muscles very smoothly and quickly.
Yes.
If you start clogging it up with even the early forms of fat that you eat and sugar, the blood flow is not the same, and your muscle recovery is not the same. And if your muscle recovery is not the same, it's not healthy. And that happens also to your heart if you're just a regular guy.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
big muscle, right?
So let's kind of set the stage here. Chronic disease results in 2/3 of all deaths. It costs $1.7 trillion a year. Whatever is underlying chronic disease is what we should focus on. Inflammation is underlying chronic disease. So we've discussed, you know, what is it about inflammation that makes it so toxic and deadly and bad for us? But let's go another level of abstraction below. What is it? If inflammation is the cause of chronic disease, what is the number one cause of inflammation?
Yeah, well, it's sort of a formula, but two big things. Okay, sugar, we already mentioned, promotes inflammation. Meat, especially industrial meat.
Processed.
Industrial meat, it's full of hormones, it's full of herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, heavy metals.
Yes.
And all that stuff is super poisonous to your body and causes inflammation.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
there are inflammatory cytokines right within the meat. I mean, I'm not knocking meat overall. I'm just saying, if you eat it, you're going to be more inflamed.
Yes.
You know, you want to get the purest, regenerative farmed, organic, you know, absolutely no whatever. I don't think you can get absolutely no whatever, but get the cleanest that you possibly can. Yes. But even then, you know, they've fed pasture raised meats to people and still found this inflammatory effect. You know, obviously a lot less than if you're eating industrial meat, but it's inflammatory, and they can measure the cytokines right within the meat, and then the cytokines that it causes in your body when you eat it.
So, in other words, chronic disease is an epidemic. Underlying that is inflammation. Currently, the way that we deal with inflammation and chronic disease is not by focusing on the two levels of abstraction below, which is poor diet causing inflammation, causing chronic disease. We try and band-aid it, and we try and suppress the symptoms. Why is that the case?
Well, you know, we could get into big pharma and Western medicine and the different approaches and all that stuff. But see, functional medicine doctors, which I am, and a lot of people are, we like to work upstream. What that means is you want to work where you're actually fixing the problem.
Yes.
Not throwing a Band-Aid at it, not throwing a pill at it. Of course, pills make a lot of money for people. So, you know, there's reason for that to go on. But you want to reduce the inflammation by reducing the cause, the root cause. And the root cause here is sugar, meat, and, you know, obviously not eating the right things, which we haven't even gotten to yet.
Yes.
So your green leafy vegetables, olive oil, plant-based protein does the opposite of what animal-based protein does.
Fantastic.
It reduces inflammation. It gives you the polyphenols. It gives you all of those beautiful chemicals that are designed. As a matter of fact, did you ever hear those studies where they looked back at like gladiators?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they found out they're vegetarians. Like, who
Crazy.
knew, right? You know,
Who knew? Yeah, from the bone.
they were like the biggest,
structure.
strongest, and they were raised, you know, to fight.
Yeah, I mean, this is I forget what the specific statistic is, but somewhere, you know, some very large proportion of the top 10 largest animals on Earth are herbivorous. They're not even omnivorous.
Yeah,
they're completely herbivorous. So one thing, you know, going through this process of starting Willo and learning more about plant-based diets and its power, I came across a lot of statistics that were really mind-blowing, because when a lot of people think about the gut, they think about this relatively unsophisticated, low-level organ that takes food and then extracts the nutrients and then expels it. But it's so much more than that. I know you can do it much better justice than I can, but there are a couple of specific things that I want to say about the gut so that everyone can understand how important it is. It's often called the second brain, but as we know evolutionarily, it was the first brain. Our second brain evolved up here much, much after our first brain down in our gut developed. And yes, there is a brain in your gut. It has 100 million neurons. It has more neurons than a hamster, a mouse, and also than a Nile crocodile. There are a huge number of neurons in your gut. Something that you taught me, for example, is that 90% of serotonin is made in the gut. We always hear about serotonin running around the brain and things like that and controlling our brain. Well, most of it is made in the gut. That was fascinating.
And the GABA comes from, if your gut is balanced, comes from the good bacteria in your gut, the GABA. And the serotonin and the GABA are your flight or fight cancel. Right. You know, they're the buffers to stress, and stress is like one of the number one killers, right? You know, and if you can't buffer your own flight or fight, you know, reaction in your body, if you don't have enough serotonin, you don't have enough GABA, you know, but having a healthy gut, once again, that's what causes it. Gives it.
I mean, depending on which study you cite, there's anywhere between a factor of 2 and a factor of 10 more bacterial cells in your body than there are actually human cells in your body.
Right.
You have a separate organism that operates in there for you to keep you alive and absorbing these nutrients and balance everything out. And one of the most interesting statistics.
It's a partnership. They are part of us.
Yes.
And we are part of them. And it needs to be that way.
Yes. And one of the most interesting statistics for me, so the vagus nerve, it must be some kind of party nerve. I don't know who named the vagus nerve, but we know they named it for a reason. This vagus nerve, a key nerve between the brain and the rest of the body. And what was found in a recent study is that 90% of the fibers in that vagus nerve are not only communicating between the gut and the brain, they're sending information from the gut to the brain.
Exactly.
So it's not like the brain is telling the gut what to do. 9 out of 10 signals in essence, sent between the gut and to the brain are from the gut and to the brain. And that was so mind-blowing.
Gut-mind connection.
Yes. I mean, but so to me, and it comes back to the question that I asked earlier, which is, I suppose we're only discovering really the importance of the gut and the microbiome over the last 30, 40 years, somewhere around there. Why is it so overlooked? I mean, yes, of course, you know, there are large businesses and large corporate industrial mechanisms that want to maintain their cash flow and things of that nature. But at the same time, when you look at the gut and you look at the microbiome, there's so much potential business in that, and good business to improve human life. Why is it because the information is new? Why has it been so overlooked in the power?
That's a good question. There's been ancient teachers and philosophers that have mentioned, you know, that what I said, that, you know, all disease begins in the gut is not something new.
Right.
There are ancient, I think Hippocrates said something like that. And there was another guy that said, you know, all death begins in the gut. Well, I'm a positive person. So it's put the other way. But.
I mean, I'll interject now. And that is the reason we named our organization Willo, is because in reading the history of medicine, Hippocrates was the first person to say, and actually use it in practice, let thy food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be thy food. And so he was the first one to say that. And of course, one of the main plants that he used to medicate, especially birthing women, was the willow plant, was the willow tree. and what is now modern day aspirin, that salicylic acid that was in the willow tree was
Right.
used. So it's just, that to us was such an inspirational thing to read, that 2,430 years ago, someone was saying, without any of the scientific mechanisms or capabilities that we have now,
Yeah.
health begins in the gut. And
So why was it ignored between
yes, for 2,000
Hippocrates and the time that I was training, which
yes,
was a while ago, but it's not as long as Hippocrates. You know, like back in the 80s, I was an intern, and nobody. It was like it was a Bermuda Triangle.
right.
No, we knew about C. difficile, we knew about inflammatory bowel disease, but it all like was treated with a pill or drugs,
Right. So
not diet. And everybody said, "Oh, eat whatever you want," and I'd always be like, "Well, that I don't agree with that. It doesn't make sense, you know."
no, that doesn't make so.
And I started doing stool testing back in the early '90s, and people thought I was crazy, but you know,
Right.
obviously I'm not.
So in other words, back, you know, in the 80s, they knew the importance of the gut, but we didn't know enough about it to properly inform the public on what to do. Is that probably closer to the truth?
I think that's true. I think we did not.
Right.
I mean, I was into it, but people in general, as a group, as a doctor, as gastroenterologist, we didn't have the right educational programs for what people should eat if they're sick, or if their gut's bothering them, or, you know, as a matter of fact, irritable bowel disease was a wastebasket diet, or they call it functional bowel disease, irritable bowel disease. After you're diagnosed with that, back when I was training, the next step was go to a psychologist, because they didn't know what to do. You know, they didn't even know, you know, some doctors were saying, Dr. Schwabe, my master, my professor emeritus at UCLA that got me into all this, he would say, you know, you got to eat more fiber. So he was onto it somewhat, but beyond that, no.
So chronic disease, massive problem, inflammation, largely the cause of any chronic disease, poor nutrition, largely the cause of a lot of inflammation. To the extent that we know, what is the optimal diet for human beings? If I'm listening to this and saying, I have a chronic disease, I have 2 or 3, I want to get rid of them and I'm dedicated to getting rid of them, what do I do? It's in the diet. What do I eat? That's the question.
Yeah, well, worst case scenario, inflammatory disease would be cancer. Best case scenario would be somebody that comes into me and says, I just want to stay healthy. You know, I'm pretty healthy now. What do I do to stay that way? You know, my mom had heart disease, my dad had heart disease. Obviously, I'm hearing inflammation. And so first thing I ask them a lot of time, what do you eat? You know, and then I start hearing what they eat. And then first I remove the sugar. I got to get them to go with the program they've eaten some way their whole lives. And then I get them to start removing some of the unhealthy meats and to eat more plant protein. It's well known that the more plant protein you eat, the healthier you are.
Right.
So that's a golden rule.
So to summarize, obviously eliminate alcohol. Eliminate processed.
You're not going to get everybody to eliminate their alcohol. Alcohol is less damaging in small amounts than the foods, honestly.
Really? Okay, so let's take alcohol off the top of the list. Eliminate sugar.
Yes.
Eliminate processed meats.
Absolutely.
Eliminate manufactured foods, processed grains.
Yeah, anything that comes in plastic, I'll tell them. And then I say shop on the edges of the grocery store, because that's where the produce is.
That's safe. That's safe.
And the middle stuff, just forget about it.
Right. Yeah.
Cookies, bread is cake without frosting. They're all inflammatory. And I do these tests on people's guts that not only tell me all the bacteria in the microbiome, but they tell me what their reaction to gluten is. And I can tell anybody that's eating a lot of, you know, processed bread. And it's inflammatory.
Yes. I mean, a problem that you and I have both identified in the past is the fact that, and studies have shown, that the nutritional quality of food since the 70s has been decreasing. And we're not talking about, you know, Pop-Tarts. We're talking about vegetables in the store, the
Just
quality of this
stuff
product.
that looks like it's good food.
Yes.
It has like something like 60 to 70% minerals and vitamins than it did pre-industrial farming.
Yes. I mean,
Because
this is,
the soil is depleted.
yes. And again, this is just another major issue that we are trying to address at Willow. Is we're trying to grow plants to their full nutritional potential. And by focusing on the nutritional potential of the plant, you don't need to eat 8 bowls of kale in order to be able to get, the vitamin K that you need out of your foods. And that's something that we're really, really focused on, is making sure that when people eat this product, they're getting the highest quality, highest nutritional composition, highest tasting product they can possibly find. It's like a common friend of ours has a saying, which is the most expensive vitamin is the one that doesn't work. And I think that's, if you're taking,
wasn't that me? I thought that was me. No,
it probably was you. If you're taking supplements, if you're eating fresh food that is 11 days old and depleted of its nutrients, pay what you want per pound. You aren't getting what your body needs. And as we get more sophisticated as a society and more technologically enabled, we can start to understand much better specifically what each individual needs every day to operate at their optimum. And that's exactly where Willow plugs in. Understanding of what do you need: magnesium, vitamin K. Are you pregnant or lactating? Are you 3 years old? Are you 65 and at risk of Alzheimer's? All of these different people and health states require slightly different nutrient compositions to operate at their optimal standards. So that's really where we come in, and giving people the capacity to not only define what they want to grow on their own plot in our farm, but also have us, with the help of you, recommend what they should be planting on their plot. That's where things
I'm super excited about that.
Really, really interesting.
So really get food as medicine.
Food as medicine. Food as medicine, personalized medicine. That's exactly right.
Then you don't have to take all that stuff,
Yes. So yeah, I mean, with that, Dr. Randall, if you have any closing things you'd like to say, please go ahead. I have a couple of closing statements that I'd like to say, but really important conversation I think we're having here.
Yeah, no, I'm just super excited. I'm super excited to get my hands on all the tools that are going to be offered to me to help my patients. And that's what I've always been interested in. So to have food as real medicine and be able to get rid of some of the numerous supplements that I have everybody taking, which are helpful, but they'll be really thrilled when they don't have to take so many.
Better to take the real thing.
And I just, inflammation is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to help us fight that in people that are sick and really need it. And it's also going to help us keep healthy people, like pregnant ladies and athletes, healthy.
Yes.
And so that's very exciting. So I just love it all.
So let me just summarize. I wrote this beforehand because I wanted it to be as short and concise and to the point as possibly can. So here goes. The role of diet is fundamental and primary in maintaining and prolonging human health, and is currently being overlooked with terrible consequences. You see it as the greatest current and future problem we face as a species. And by ignoring the data, we will continue to plunder ourselves and our planet. I've long appreciated the saying, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? It is my, Dr. Randall's, my brother's, and Willow's mission to eliminate diet-related disease through personalized plant-based nutrition. We've made it our responsibility to proliferate vertical farming technology throughout the globe to give everyone the power to control their diet and take control of their health. So with that, Dr. Randall, I thank you for your time, your influence on me, and of course, your lifetime of dedication to making humans well.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Until next time, be well.